All right, guys, we're going to fire up part 2 here. Let me get this going. Oh, shit. Okay. First up, we're going to have Lorenzo. Your question is, hi, Coach. I saw you often use Ableton vocoder on the synths. When I try to use it, I don't get the best results. What's the way you use it? And what is your suggestion to use it? So I can show you a couple different ways to use it. So really it's just for achieving a slightly tighter sound. That's the best way I can explain it. It's just slightly different. So what you do is you vocoder, enhance, modulator, and let me show you the difference between these two now. As you can see, it's a slightly tighter sound, and the reason being is because the signal is being split and reproduced through these 20 bands right here. So it has a little bit of like a phasing effect going on. There's a lot happening under the hood here that I won't really try to get into, but what I usually will set it to is anywhere from 20 to 40. I usually experiment with the bands, and I set the range wide, 18 to 20. And then from here, depending on how tight you want the sound or not, you can either push up the depth and down the release. As you can see, that sounds tremendously different. Or do the opposite for a much more airy, long sound. So that's pretty much how I use it. The only other thing I could think of is if you want to use a noise, if you want to use the noise mode, noise mode on the vocoder, that kind of lets you get those big screechy sounds, which can be fun. They're really good for layers. If you're making a set, like in the last question I was making a layer bass. So if you can, if you use a noise layer, it can really thicken up the sound. Like that. Pretty cool, right? So yeah, that's pretty much how I use vocoder in Ableton. Hopefully that gives you some help. Good question. All right. Next. Hang on. All right, Seam, you're going to be up now. 240. All right, Seam, your question is, when is Europe going to get the remix playlist? I'm about to upload it today onto the Patreon, so you'll be able to grab it. Thank you for being patient. I'm very sorry that the number system didn't work. We were trying to look for an alternative, but it doesn't look like we're going to have anything soon, so I'm going to give it to you guys on here. All right, moving on. Let's do a 315 here for Justin. All right, Justin. Your question is, could you briefly go over what each thing, like a sequence, pluck, lead, pad, etc., is, what they are and what they can be used for? Yeah, so pretty simple. I can show you exactly what's going on with those. So a sequence, usually a sequence is just like a sound that plays a sequence. So if I were to make one real quick, it usually has like volume automation, something where it just plays like a little pattern. So let me just draw out a little pattern here. Like this maybe. Okay. So I'll turn the rate down. So what a sequence is used for is for just giving you a little bit of inspiration. Like say you find a preset that's a sequence. It gives you a little bit of inspiration for rhythm. So you don't have to map it out yourself like in the MIDI. It's just already baked into the synth. So that's a sequence. Usually it's like a lead. A pluck is a sound that at base level it resembles something that is plucked, like a plucked instrument, and usually that's achieved by doing a LFO on the cutoff of a synth. So, for example, turn this ringer off real quick. This is what a pluck sounds like. So almost imagine it to be like a synthesized guitar or any other instrument that like has a string that you can pluck. That's what this is used to sort of emulate the sound of. And, you know, in production, we use plucks for, you know, you can use them for like intro synths, breakdown synths, stuff like that. You can make chords with plucks, etc. Those are the most common uses there. Next one, we have a lead. So a lead, think of it like the reason it's called a lead is because it's the sound that leads everything else. It's what you're focusing on when you're listening to a track. So a lead might just be something that sounds like this, nice and long. Maybe has like some... Say I wanted to look for a preset here, so we're going to have synth... Wait. Hard leads. So unlike plucks, they're like nice and kind of long, so that they have like the most energy and impact. You use them for like the drops, stuff like that, or just like more high intense sections where a lead would be played. A pad is like a very, very soft, like reverb, washed out instrument, and you usually use these for like background ambience. Let's try another one here to... So you see it's like very like washed out, lots of reverb and echo stuff going on. I have a rack that I made. Let's see. It's on the Patreon. It's called Easy Pad Maker. And it can take just about whatever sound you feed into it and turn it into a pad. It accomplishes this because it has some various effects like chorus. This is a reverb node, and then just some various other things going on in there that help wash out the sound and turn it into a pad. And that's pretty much it. That's hopefully that gives you some insight as to more what those things are and what their roles are. And what mostly is their use case. Those are like 9 times out of 10 what those different instruments are used for. So very good question. Hopefully this gives you some insight and you feel good about the answer. All right, we're going to move on to Crypt Keeper. Put you at 8. All right, Crypt. Hey, Coach, just wondering if you could explain your process when making gun basses, tear-out style basses. Do you prefer layering samples or using synths? How do you process them? So I could do a little bit of both. I'll show you kind of what I usually do for tear-out guns. So first things first, I'll usually start with some kind of like a sample just so I have like signal that works. So let's see. So I could even try something like this, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to warp it down so it's real fast. So you can see it's kind of clicky, a little bit poppy. Let me see if I can layer in one more. Let's try, I don't know, maybe one of these. Yeah, this will work. That's kind of dong-y. Just... So I got these two sounds, and that's just giving me my signal that I'm going to start with. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to resample these. Get a clean, fresh, new signal. Okay. Could delete this. I don't need it anymore. So here's the sound now that I'm working with. So the way I start doing this is very, very straightforward. I'm going to put on a frequency shifter. And I'm going to play around with this, and I'm going to see what different frequencies make it sound like. So I think that sounds kind of cool, nice and a little bit high. Now, this is where most of the magic happens for me, at least. I'm going to put on Serum Effects, and I want the comb filter. So I'm going to put on comb filter. And I'm going to set the cutoff wherever I want it, and I'm going to adjust the resonance. Usually I do this to be something that's like tuned to my track. Now, here's the spice. I'm going to group this, and I'm going to create another chain so that these are running in parallel. And now I have two. I have, let me pull this up real quick. This is the guy I've already done. And this is the new guy. So what I'm going to do with the second guy is I'm going to keep combs on there, but I'm going to adjust the cutoff and maybe the resonance a little bit. So. Nice. Sounds good. So I have two separate, once again, I have two separate cutoffs. Levels working together at the same exact time. The signal is being split through two different chains to create two different sounds simultaneously, and they come back to being one. Now, at this point, let me try, I'm going to look at the EQ a little bit. Might cut out some of this shit. And then let's try doing another frequency shifter. I'm very experimental with this. I take this all over the place, just so you're aware. Okay. I'm going to leave that there right now. I'm going to aim for like a higher one right here. And then let's put some OTT on this guy. Usually adjust these a little bit. I like to turn the time up. You could tell the difference. Nice. So sounding good so far. And then let's try a couple other things here. I'm going to put on like a transient shaper. That's not what I want. Cool. So I'm going to keep this guy, but I'm going to duplicate him. Turn this guy off, and I'm going to freeze and flatten this one, or resample, whatever. And let's play around with this one a little bit now. Let's try some different pitches. So turning it down gets a pretty cool result. So let's go ahead and resample that guy. Let me go ahead and get a sub bass now. Group these together and put a clipper on them so that there's some distortion occurring. Nope, not you. I might try one more time frequency shifting. And the pattern is very important. If you get a good pattern, it can really make a big difference. Yeah, it sounds like shit at the end, but you get the point. Even try turning this down. So yeah, that's how I go from that guy, which was originally, oops, that guy, to this. So that's how I do my tear out guns. Pretty much the same exact shit every single time. Hopefully that gives you some insight. I think it's a pretty decent process. It's at least unique for me, and I'm more than happy to share it with you. So good stuff. Great question. Thank you very much for asking. All right. Let us move forward to Zakir. Put you here at 16:30. All right. It was dope meeting you at the Denver show. I appreciate you for coming out. Coach, hope all is well. You the same. First, I want to say dope show in Denver. Thank you. I had a great time in Denver as well. I have a question that you may have gotten a ton of, or maybe you haven't. Currently, I have songs on my hard drive that either have drops but no intro, or intros and no drops. Last month, I sent you You're My Fire. That drop came from an idea of pulling the notes out of the synth loop I had, and it worked. The song you described as a mix of Marshmello, Zed's Dead, and Subtronics. That is the sound I go for most times. I enjoy vocals with melodies, but have a gritty drop. How do you blend that without going into a different genre like color bass? I currently have an intro to a song that is very melodic. I'm not very sure how I can make a drop with this song that is melodic and gritty. Any tips or advice would be appreciated. Yep, so let me check this real quick. Uh-oh, wait a minute. I think the parentheses gave me a hard time there. Okay, so there's a couple things that I can try to recommend off the bat after listening to that. So first things first, without even having listened to that, what I was going to initially say is that the number one way to accomplish this goal is to just have really strong transitions. Strong transitions meaning, like when you start getting to your build-up, introduce a lot of like edgier sounds and just, darker, deeper, heavier sounds, grittier sounds, stuff that'll just kind of foreshadow what's coming later. So the transitional piece is always the most important. This is applicable in other instances as well. Just say, for example, like I get a lot of questions where it's like, how do you do like a nice bright melodic intro and then a super heavy drop without it sounding like two different songs? And the answer is always the same. There's two things. The main one is proper foreshadowing occurring in the buildup. And secondly, it's the use of sounds earlier in the track or the use of sounds and rhythms earlier in the track that can still foreshadow what is going to happen in the drop. That's how you get the track to sound uniform, even if there's like a very stark contrast between what is going on in the intro and in the drop. In your case, I see where you could be coming to a little bit of an issue. And I think the reason is quite simply that the instrumental that you had painted out there for the intro is very upbeat. It's very like happy and lively in nature, and that's mostly based off of the musicality of it, not even like the sound choices or anything. It's very like, I believe it's playing a major chord progression, which if you're going to try to get something like deep and gritty and dark, minor chord progression is probably what you want to steer towards rather. So that that's one piece of it you could try. Is just switching the chord progression to be like darker and revolving around darker chords rather than happier chords. Secondly, the sound choice, the little pluckies that you had there, those are kind of, again, once, as I said, a little bit more upbeat and happy as opposed to like dark and gritty. So, what you could do is you could put effects on or like heavy reverb or stuff to sort of wash it out and make it feel a little bit like darker and mysterious. And that will kind of keep things uniform. You have to think of it like this: the elements that you're using in this song, how do they communicate with each other? Do they all live in the same world, or are they in separate worlds? When you're trying to make a uniform track, having all the sounds kind of live in the same world is the key. If you find that the sounds that you're using are living in different worlds, then it might be a best choice to try to just select different sounds in one way or another. So it takes some practice and takes some getting used to. It's a skill all on its own to select sounds. Making sounds is one thing, picking sounds is another. Picking good sounds is just as much of a skill. It might not be as time consuming or tedious as making like a crazy rhythm yoy or whatever the fuck. But picking the right sound to actually paint your music is very, very important. So hopefully that answers your question. I think it should. I think you'll be on the right path thereafter. But I know exactly what you're talking about, like with your style and stuff. So I think you'll be able to have some good luck with it after just going in and switching up the feel of the track, if that makes sense. All right. I think that's about it that we have for the feedbacks. So thank you guys, and I'm going to get this uploaded, and yeah, see you next month.